Okay, kids, this is going to have to be in two pieces. So hopefully you saw the first part where I referred to you to page 187 in your book, page 187 in your textbook, and to this key graph right here. Right, so you have that in front of you, 187. And what we were talking about in that last video, and I keep running out of memory. I don't know why. I mean, I just is doing this on an iPad, and I'm making mistakes. What we were talking about was five prices that you see there illustrated: P1, P2, P3, P4, P5. Four quantities: Q2, Q3, Q4, and Q5. Now, if you look at that illustration, what you can see is a typical marginal cost curve that falls, bottoms, and rises, an average total cost curve, and an average variable cost curve. So that marginal cost, average total cost, and average variable cost are true for all firms. Whether it's a perfectly competitive firm or not, they face those costs in the short run, and that's because in the short run there is fixed capital. It gets back to that. So what's added to this picture that makes it perfect competition is basically five marginal revenue curves that are the same as the demand curve that the firm faces at five prices. So at P1, this firm can sell as much of the product as they want to. At P2, they can sell as much of the product as they want to. At P3, they can sell as much of the product as they want to. At P4, they can sell as much of the product as they want to. At P5, the same thing is true. Now, how much are they going to want to sell at P2? Well, B, because that's where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and that tends to be Q2. How much are they going to want to sell at P3? C, or Q3, because that's where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. How much at P4, right? At P4, D, or Q4, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And at P5, E, or Q5, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So every one of those they want to produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, right? So now let's take a look at each one of them, and let's start with P5. So take a look at P5. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost at E, right? And Q5. Now, we know that the price, therefore, is P5. The quantity is Q5. If there were numbers there and you took price times quantity, you'd get the total revenue. What's the total cost? Well, you have to go down to the average total cost curve, and you can see that the price is higher than the average total cost. So at P5, if price is greater, write this down, right? P greater than ACT equal profit. P greater than ACT equal profit. P is greater than ACT, firm is making a profit, right? Why is the firm making a profit? Because the price is high. Now go to P4. All right, at P4, you're at D. What's true? At P4, marginal revenue equals marginal cost at Q4, right? Well, at P4, what's average total cost? Well, at P4, average total cost is equal to price. Price equal ACT. That means the firm is breaking even, right? Price equal ACT. The firm is breaking even, right? At P5, price was greater than ACT. Firm was making a profit. At P4, price is equal to ACT. Firm is breaking even, right? Now go to P3. P3, Q3, right? That's where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, right? Well, price is less than ACT. Firm is incurring a loss. P is less than ACT equals a loss, right? So what's the difference between profitability and loss? Where price is. P5 is a higher price, firm makes a profit. P4 is a lower price, firm breaks even. P3, lower yet, firm incurs a loss, right? So what determines the price? Well, the supply and the demand in the overall market. Firm has nothing to do with it. It's subject to the market price. So So what we're saying here is, in a perfectly competitive industry, the producer only has one choice: to produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and then their profitability is determined by the price in that market. Right? The higher the price, the more likely they are to profit. The lower the price, the more likely they are not to. Now, let's focus in on P3, a loss. Right? That means this firm is the cost of producing a unit is less than they collect from the sale of that unit. They're incurring a loss. Now, this firm is losing money. Now, I should tell you, this is an economic loss. That means it might not actually be an accounting loss, but it's an economic loss. But it raises an interesting question. Why would the firm want to stay in business? Right? Now, go down to P1. And P1 at A suggests that this firm would not stay in business if the price was P1. At P1, they'd be incurring a loss too. At P3, they're incurring a loss, but they would stay in business. So what's the difference? Well, you could say, well, P1 is a lower price than P3, right? That's the difference. And both of them are losses. But in the short run, what we argue is the firm will endure a loss as long as the loss is less than the firm's total fixed costs. Right? So in the short run, firms will endure a loss as long as the loss is less than the firm's total fixed cost. Now, the way we say this is, if price is equal to or greater than average variable cost, the firm will produce, right? Even if there's a loss. So if price is greater than or equal to average variable cost, then the firm will produce, right? If price is less than that, right, than average variable cost, then the firm shuts down. Now, here's why. In the short run, the firm pays its fixed costs. So let's say that a business, a pizza shop, right? Let's say they lease a building, and they lease it for 2 years. Well, they got to pay the lease one way or the other. Let's say they bought equipment, and they have to pay interest on that equipment for 2 years or 5 years or whatever. Well, I mean, those things are fixed. Let's say they have to pay taxes on the building for the period of time they're there. Those costs are fixed. So let's say their total fixed cost annually is $10,000. So they're going to pay $10,000 in costs, whether they produce 1 unit or 1,000,000,000 units. Those fixed costs stay the same. Well, okay. What if they would be losing less than $10,000? What if they operated and they lost $8,000 in total? Their total loss was $8,000. They shut down, it cost them $10,000. They'd be better off to operate at a loss. Now, that's always true if the price they collect is greater than the average variable cost. So if the price they collect is greater than the average variable cost, then it's going to be true that they're going to lose less by operating than they would by shutting down, right? If the price is below it, then they would lose more from operating than shutting down, so they'd shut down. Therefore, we call price equal average variable cost the shutdown price. So look at P2. P2B is shut down. Any price below P2, the firm shuts down, right? So for this firm to produce, the price has to at least be P2. And that at any price above that, they'll produce. At P3, they'll produce at a loss. At D, they'll produce breaking even. At E, they'll produce at a profit. The big point is that the firm has nothing to do with any of those prices. They are dictated to them. They're so small they have no control. And so, I mean, is there a practical lesson in this? Well, one practical lesson is the more competitive the industry is, The closer it comes to perfect competition, the less power the firm has over price, the more subject the firm is to the variations of the market, right? And that becomes difficult if you want to be an entrepreneur. You don't want to really be in an industry like that. I mean, obviously farmers have other things that interest them. And government intrudes in that because it is so volatile. But the point is, right, that the individual firm just doesn't have much control over price, and so that price is dictated to them, and their profitability or loss or whatever is determined by the price that they have no control over. Now, here's what's interesting. And I'm just going to throw this out to you just quickly, and this is what's interesting. What's interesting is that in the long run, we are going to argue that all the firms in a perfectly competitive industry will end up breaking even. That the long run outcome, right, is not a profit, it's not a loss, it's to break even. That in the short run, a firm can make a profit. In the short run, the firm can incur a loss. But in the long run, that neither of those outcomes are possible. In the long run, they'll break even. Wouldn't it be interesting to know why that's the case? Wouldn't that be an interesting thing to know? Why, in the long run, the perfectly competitive firm tends to break even? And if you take a test, that's going to be the answer to at least 3 or 4 questions, right? I mean, in the long run, the perfectly competitive firm breaks even. The answer, the quick answer, and I'll leave you with this and pick up with another video, the quick answer is because it's easy to enter and exit into the industry. More on that soon.